mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is on up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Night of Ones podcast, episode number 65. As a reminder, we're the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, a shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. And remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, X, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle. Check us out on the Big 12 Huddle and the new stream that will obviously be coming next year. So, folks, want to apologize. Last week, we didn't have a chance to record a show. There were some mix-ups in schedules and things just didn't happen. So I apologize. It's the first time we've missed one without announcing it. That being said, that ASU win or loss was a tough one to swallow. This week was no better. So at this point, I think that we are just going to focus less on the game and more about the program, because right now we have some questions to answer about the program. And to help me do that this week, I've got, and welcome to the stage, Tre Neal. What's up, Tre?
How you doing?
That was awesome. That was awesome. Welcome back. And as you guys know, we normally have a process here. And unfortunately,
I'm not last. I think this is my first time being last.
Yeah, this is the only time you've been last. And that's because the rest of the crew are unfortunately out this week. Alan and Ben's still in West Virginia. Alan, unfortunately, he's got a sick son that he's tending to. He was in West Virginia, just got back. Josh is in Europe, and Nobra has to help his girlfriend this evening. So I am producing, which is why there'll be a lot of editing for Nobra. And we'll also hosting the show and with Tre this week. So you only get the two of us, but that's okay. Because we've got a lot to say. So this week, as I said, I don't really want to touch too much on West Virginia. Obviously, I think we're all disappointed. The bowl streak ends. That was something that I didn't think would happen. I was a little concerned about how we would play in the frozen tundra that was West Virginia. It was pretty cold. And as those of us who've played in snow, and Tre definitely has in Nebraska, and I did in Germany, it gets cold, and when you're hitting people and when you're getting hit, it hurts. And ball security was definitely something that I was concerned about, and that reared its ugly head with the Dylan Risk fumble at the front end. But beyond that, I don't really want to say much about West Virginia. When Ben and Alan get back next week, we might have them talk a little bit about the experience. I did ask them, because they were sitting right behind the bench about 6 rows up from our bench. I asked Alan, I said, did the team look like it had given up? And his take on it was, and I was a little concerned about next week, would this be a lifeless team against Utah? And his assessment of the body language was they obviously weren't having a good time, especially being down, but he didn't get the sense that this was a team that had just given up from the body language from the sideline, and he expects them to come out against Utah and be motivated. So that was my biggest concern coming out of West Virginia, because, what do we have to play for at this point? One final win against Utah at home on Black Friday for the seniors. And Kobe Hudson and RJ Harvey both had their last pressers this week. And if you go back, I'd encourage you to go back and watch it. There were a lot of tough questions asked of them, and they handled it pretty well. And RJ Harvey, being the consummate professional that he is, handled it well. And it was kind of interesting because Kobe made a comment about him having the choice to leave UCF and go pro or potentially go somewhere else 2 years in a row, and he stuck with UCF, and he talked about why he did that. RJ obviously spending the vast majority of his career here. He started it at Virginia and as a QB and transferred here and ended up with tied for the top number of touchdowns in UCF program history for a running back, and I expect him to break that record this week. So he'll leave with that record in hand, and just, a great player for UCF. Any thoughts, Tre, from your side on, just RJ Harvey, and obviously Kobe Hudson, and what your thoughts are? What are their chances as far as, being drafted? And overall, your thoughts on them as players for UCF and what their legacy is.
Yeah, I mean, for RJ, I'll start with him. Arguably, or actually, inarguably, probably a top 2 running back in history. Arguably, I think we look back maybe 5 years, 10 years from now, people will probably be having that discussion. I think just as time goes on, the older guys fade away. That's just life, That's just what happens. So the Kevin Smith allure, I didn't see him play live, but I saw Kevin Smith when he coached me. He was still young, extremely springy when he played. Like, he would practice with us at running back, and I was like, holy smokes, like, this is a beast.
I mean, he still looks like he could run guys over right now. You look at the guy now, and he still looks like he's in shape and ready to carry the rock for 200 yards.
Yeah, so then imagine him, peak his prime, 21 years old to 25, 26. Like, that, I saw that. So to me, he's the best. The records, but then you have a guy like RJ who he was in that prime UCF. I call it like the prime window. Like, this is our first time in the Big 10, Big 12. We're still that hot program, and we'll get into the trajectory now. But I think like we're in that window of, this is a fun, fast team that people they know about. Everybody didn't know about UCF in 2007 when Kevin Smith was running. Wild. People know who UCF is, and RJ is probably the best running back of probably the last 10 years, to be honest with you, for sure. Probably since Kevin Smith. So, I mean, his career is outstanding. He probably will break the record. I know we talked about it at the beginning of the year. I was like, man, that's going to be a hard record to break. But early on, I mean, Gus is going to get him the ball. And I think that's kind of what you play for. You play for guys like that late. And then Kobe Hudson, of course, the lineage of a UCF wide receiver. He's going to go down as one of the better ones. It didn't. I'm sure he just deep down it didn't pan out how he wanted to this year. Understandably, we've started 4 quarterbacks. That's never a good thing for a wide receiver, especially a guy with NFL aspirations. And I think he's going to get a shot. He's made plenty of plays. He has plenty of tape. He's a good player. It's just who's going to take the chance on him. Same thing with RJ. I think both of them are going to play in the NFL. When they get drafted, that'll be, I think, to be honest, it's going to be how they test. That's what I think most of it's going to be, because they're not freak of natures in the sense, 6'5", Calvin Johnson type of guys. They're not Adrian Killens fast, but they're really good football players. So it's going to be just the testing part, and they'll get their shot. Now, when they get their shot, what they do with it, that's up to them. But I think they have a very good chance of getting drafted and, being able to stick to NFL roster. So those guys are great players. It sucks to go out like this. I know, when we went 0-12, the one thing, even as much dysfunction as we had, we wanted the seniors to go out with a win. So, I think we played hard. We were just bad. That's just the reality of it.
We played hard. We were just bad. that.
Yeah, like, and it's not like we didn't have talent. We weren't a good football team at the time. We didn't play cohesively. But I know for a fact that last game we didn't want the seniors to go out, and I know the seniors don't want to go out with a loss. And then again, my last year at Nebraska, we weren't really playing for much, but again, we're playing for those younger guys to learn that there is a way to play football. And it's not just at UCF. This is just the game you play. You can't take off plays. We're going to look back at the season again, sadly, and the team wasn't that bad. There's a lot of games that
there's 3 games. There's 3 games that we should have won. I mean, honestly, and ASU was one of them. We should have won that game as well. And so if you look at it from that perspective, we've got 4 wins right now. This should be a 7 win team right now.
For sure. Probably looking at 8 wins. Yeah, and to be honest with you, if you have the quarterback issue figured out, look at the Big 12 right now. 3 weeks ago, it was a walk-in. BYU was going to be there, and maybe Colorado, maybe Arizona State, maybe Iowa State. That's what we're looking at.
Maybe K-State.
Yeah,
K-State at that point too.
This is up in the air right now. I think Arizona State's locked in, but that wasn't really a team we were. It was BYU and who's going to be that second team. Now it's Arizona State and who's going to be that second team. So I think we're going to look back and this season was – I don't want to say this is our shot, but I felt like if we could have put it all together, this would have been the year. I feel like we have the players. We have the talent. It's just, again, that's why you take these magical seasons. You can't take them lightly because so much has to go right, even outside of having the talent. Just the plays have to go right. The calls have to go right. The coaching has to go right. So much goes right to win a football game. I hate that it's going to end, on some of these all-time great for sure with RJ. His career is going to end like this. But, hopefully we can get a win. But as, just to send them out and all the seniors, not just those 2. Those are just, the notable guys. But, again, nobody wants to leave their last game, a loser. So I know that feeling.
I think that's a good transition to the program conversation, right? Because, but I want to say a couple of more things about RJ and Kobe. So, with regard to where I think they're going to end up on draft day, I think, unfortunately, and RJ said it himself. He said, "Hey, when you don't win, your draft stock suffers, right?" And unfortunately, that's the bad part for RJ Harvey, because the team didn't come through for him, because he really dominated the Big 12. He, as a running back, he really, really did, and was a top 3 to 5 running back. Unfortunately, running backs don't draft as high as some of the other positions anymore, like they used to. But at the same time, I think RJ, if he has a good, if he tests well, right, and he performs well during pro day, I think that he's a 4th rounder, late 4th rounder, maybe an early to mid 5th rounder. Yep. Somewhere in there is where I think RJ will end up.
Now, if he tests off the charts, he could push like that late 3rd, because RJ's everything you want, and not only a locker room guy, but a football player. He can do everything. He's explosive. He can run physical if you need him to. He can run, different types of styles. And he's shown that he can catch. He's an extremely versatile running back. But like you said, when you're losing games, you get overshadowed. I can remember 0-12 year going into that draft prep pro day. There were not a lot of teams at that pro day. After the undefeated season, every single team was at that pro day. Every single, there was a lot of GMs, a lot of head coaches, and they're not only there for those guys there, they're looking at, because most of the time we have a workout before or after that, and they go to see how those next guys are coming up. So it's not just horrible for RJ in that sense. It's, it doesn't help the juniors, the redshirt juniors, the younger guys, because we know we have a talented roster. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead about Kobe.
No, and from Kobe's perspective, I think he's actually hurt worse than RJ is, because RJ, no matter what, against Big 12 competition and P5 competition, he still outperformed most of the league as far as running backs are concerned. And you look, Ollie Gordon was the talk of the offseason, and he's just disappeared, right, at Oklahoma State.
Dominated the Big 12 again, like
100%.
Not just once. He did it again, which that's what they want to see. That's a consistency. But like a guy like Kobe, he had a great year last year. I think even as playing like that Robin role to Javon Baker, he was a high level Robin. Like, okay, this guy gets a shot at the alpha role. He could be a Javon Baker level player, but it just didn't unfold that way. And like you said, I think that's going to hurt his stock, not because he's not a good player. Just that's the sad part about your senior year. That's the difficult decision when you see guys that struggle with if they want to come back for a year, if they want to transfer, if they want to go to the pros. These are the decisions that they have to weigh because in hindsight, Kobe probably should have went to the draft last year. There's the more upside. You come off that positivity, or you go somewhere. You go somewhere with a consonant quarterback. I know that you don't want.
Well, in everybody's defense, including Kobe's, though, they thought they had that in KJ Jefferson. I thought they had KJ Jefferson.
We all did.
Like that was the whole point this year was like to load up and rumors abound. I can't confirm this with 100%, but I will say from a lot of people that Gus Malzahn helped the NIL fund this year. His expectation was he was putting together a team to win. He did not like what happened last year, and he was trying to put together a team that win. And he set expectations for a championship level team, or at least championship contending level team. That did not happen this year, and it was largely quarterback. And KJ Jefferson was a big part of that. Say what you want about Ja'Kurrie Brown. He was not expected to start. It was supposed to be KJ's team. He was told he was not going to start. He was going to have time to get seasoning. We ended up with the fourth string quarterback who was not certainly wasn't expecting to play.
And he's probably looked the best out of all of them.
And it certainly gave us, and Gus said this too, and we all knew this, it gave us a different dynamic that we were missing for many of those games. And we still had close losses. So this season was just all over the place. Special teams has a lot to work on. Yes. Brian Blackman, I know he's a decent recruiter, but man, special teams were special this year. We should never lose that many games. And again,
lose a game because of special teams.
Well, and we didn't lose them because of a lot of other things had happened, but they should not be the detriment. Correct. So, so having said all of that, we'll have some more conversation about RJ after next week's game. But having said all that, let's take a step back and talk about the program. So Gus Malzahn came out and said unequivocally twice now, he's not retiring. Okay. Yep. Financially, the dude's owed $12 million, right? Yep. So maybe they negotiate something if that's the case, if Terry really turns the screws, but we wouldn't know that anyway for a lot of reasons, from a recruiting perspective, from a negotiation perspective, from a bunch of other stuff. Because remember, folks, after next week's game, you've got the December signing period. You've got a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made quickly regarding the portal. And you saw some recruiting news coming out this week, largely guys that were receiving offers that were playing JUCO level, or they may have been playing on other teams or 3-stars or whatever. We have a lot of holes to fill because we had a lot of seniors on this team. So it's going to be really, really interesting. But Gus is, at least outwardly saying that. And if he were to leave, it would be expensive. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the offseason a few weeks from now. I wouldn't be surprised if Gus doesn't clean house. Now, who he gets to replace them, I don't know. I think our recruiting class is, we'll hold on to some of them. Javon Boggs was flirting with Michigan there for a while, but recommitted or not recommitted. He reinforced his commitment to UCF, which is a huge wide receiver threat, and we're going to need him. Burdell Richardson should be coming back. Hopefully we can hold on to him. And that should be, two pretty good receivers and whoever else we can get from a transfer portal perspective. Mm-hmm. I just think from a program, even Mark Daniels today, who works for UCF, by the way, said that UCF is in full rebuild mode. And we've kind of been patching it with the transfer portal for the past few seasons. But now the time is to rebuild. And the question is that a Gus Malzahn rebuild? Or is that someone else's rebuild to do? I think that financially, no matter what, if Terry were to try to force the issue, we wouldn't be able to force the issue until next year.
Yeah.
Just financially. So unless Gus wants to hang up his whistle, which I don't see that happening, and how he unequivocally came out and said no, and then reinforced it again and said 100% coming back next year, I don't think that's going to happen. So where are we at today as a program? Well, we're not where we want to be. We're a middling Big 12 program. I think we could have won more games. I think we could have just as easily been a 7-win team as a 4-win team. I think we've got a lot of holes on the coaching staff. I think we need maybe a newer direction with regard to how we handle our recruiting / portal presence. And the other big question is what happens with Mikey Keene, or not Mikey Keene. Wow. Did I just say Mikey Keene? I did. Mikey Keene was such an issue for that long. Dylan Risk is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
What happens with Dylan Risk? So he comes in, plays fairly well for us, right? Freshman comes in, plays fairly well for us. And, we're going to be on the hunt for quarterbacks again this offseason. So where does he shuffle out with that? Ja'Cory Brown, what happens with him? Is he going to end up leaving? We've been pressing pretty hard for a couple of different 4-star quarterbacks as well, which we need to continue to do. And you've got EJ Colson waiting in the wings too. So you'll have Dylan Risk and you'll have EJ Colson. I think a large part of that's going to be, okay, so Dylan Risk showed quite a bit. Did he show enough to have another team dump enough money on his front doorstep? And what is that conversation with regard to EJ Colson and Dylan Risk after Utah's over that following week? What's that conversation with Gus Malzahn when they sit down in the office? Because Gus Malzahn, his first priority, he said it a couple of weeks ago, is figure out who's staying, figure out who's going, and then go portal shopping. That's what's going to happen. So, it's going to be some really, really interesting times coming up. As a program, we aren't where we want to be. And the question is what can we do to elevate ourselves, or at least look like we're on a path? You mentioned the word trajectory, to a positive trajectory. So I'm going to ask you, Tre, you're a football guy too. You played college football. You see where the team is today. What's it going to take for this UCF program to get to where we expected it and wanted it to be?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we have to have an identity as a program. I think we have an identity as what we think UCF is. I think we've embraced the young, up and coming potential juggernaut. But now it's more so time to put up or shut up. We're in the Power Four. We recruited a high level, I believe, we're in a hot state to get plenty of athletes, plenty of players. I think we have to have an identity. And that starts with, who is Gus going to go lead this program at the quarterback position? The quarterback position we saw this year can make or break a season. And then not just in our team, with a lot of these teams. Look at Oregon. Look at Alabama. Alabama looks great when Jalen Milroe's playing great. They look bad when he's playing bad. Same thing with Oregon. Same thing with us. We saw KJ Jefferson, even though it was a small little blip, when he played great, we looked like a really good football team. We saw that even with Ja'Curry Brown in moments. We saw that with Dylan Risk in moments. So I think just because, EJ Colston's a freshman, he's probably going to get redshirted just because he hasn't played 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a redshirt freshman. Ja'Curry Brown, I think he's a redshirt freshman now, so he'll be a redshirt sophomore.
I think he's a redshirt sophomore this year.
This year? Okay. So the thing is, there's got the time frame of these guys, they're all bunched together. It's not going to be whoever you choose realistically, the other 2 guys are going to be probably looking elsewhere, in my honest opinion. If you roll with EJ Colston, Dylan Risk has put out enough tape, nice tape, to go look elsewhere. If you make Dylan Risk it, EJ Colston's, he's 17 years old. He's supposed to be in high school right now. Somebody's going to take a chance on him, because he's a good player. Same thing with Ja'Curry Brown. He struggles, and we know the issues he has, but the talent is there. He was a big-time kid coming out of high school. So I think whoever he chooses, who I think he should choose, I think he should go with Dylan Risk. Because that's what you want out of the program, in my opinion. It's bigger than just the starting quarterback. Yeah, Dylan Risk, I think, is the better option because he can throw more consistently. But
then EJ Colson?
From what I've seen, yes. I think EJ's more athletic. I think EJ's upside's higher than Dylan's. In a real world, I wish we could keep both of them. I know this just because they're a year separated apart. It's not realistic, especially with how it unfolded at the end of the year. It's probably not a realistic option that you keep both of them. But I think the way you want your program to be run, a guy who consistently, you're saying, according to what Josh said, he's the 4th string guy staying after practice every day throwing the ball, getting that represent, just being ready to play. And we saw the spark he brought when he plays. It's noticeable that the team gravitates to him. Not to EJ's fault, just that's who he is. And I think you can build from it. I think you can surround him with pieces. That's, I think, is the formula to lead us to the trajectory. Now, do I think Dylan Risk is going to?
Let me pause you there because I want to ask you a different question.
Go ahead.
So between those 2, EJ Colson and Dylan Risk, okay, foundationally, from a recruiting perspective, do you think it's easier to recruit both portal players who are more likely to want to stand out now and or high school recruits with EJ or with Dylan? So if you were a recruit and you were looking and they said, okay, it's Dylan, or hey, okay, it's EJ, which one would you rather play with?
If I were a portal guy, I would rather it be EJ because he hasn't had enough experience. I could think that if I have played, I don't know the kids out there now, but if I played, a year or so or a year and a half of football, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I think that I can outdo a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid because he's just young. He hasn't seen a lot. He played one half maybe of football. He still has a lot to see. There's going to be growing pains with EJ. Now, his ceiling's through the roof, but will he get to that ceiling next year? I don't know. He could. Mackenzie Milton did it in year 2. Guys have done it in year 2. So if I were a transfer guy, I'd want EJ to stay because I feel like I'd be a bridge guy. Most of these transfer guys are, like KJ Jefferson. They have maybe 1 year left to put on some tape. So they could be that perfect bridge. With Dylan, if it were Dylan at quarterback, I probably wouldn't come as a transfer guy. He knows the playbook. He can throw. He's consistent. And the guys rally around him.
I meant
like that.
I appreciate the perspective, but I meant more like when we're talking about wide receivers, running backs.
Oh, yeah. If I'm a wide receiver, I want Dylan Risk. Just because I've seen him spread the football around. I've seen 4 quarterbacks all season. Now, it's tough too. Because you see a lot of this is what you see in practice. I don't know how EJ looks in practice. Obviously, he looked good enough to where he was the next guy starting at one point, over Dylan. I don't know if that was over Gus, the Gus choice, or what, but there was a point where they chose him over. We kind of default to defaultly had to, ride with Dylan. Not saying he's a bad player, just you can't come in the fourth quarter looking that good when we've had quarterback problems all year and not start the next few games. And he took advantage of the opportunity. If I were a receiver, I would probably take Dylan just because he makes my life easier. I don't have to worry about a run heavy game plan. It's going to be, he's going to spread the ball around. I mean, Dylan Riss made Jacoby Jones look good. I think a guy like Bradell Richardson with another year in the offseason, he could go slide right in that role. He's going to have Kobe Hudson. There's a lot of balls that Kobe dropped that Dylan put on the money. And there's some timing issues as well that he missed them. But
yeah, I mean, Kobe, even going back to last year, there was some drop issues for Kobe. Yeah. That's one thing he's going to have to show in the combine.
Yeah, for sure. So I think from that perspective, that's who I'd want, just because, again, he's the guy that can facilitate the kind of like the point guard, in a sense, the Mikey Keene, the guy that he might not wow you with his stature. He might not wow you with his athletic ability. It might just be serviceable there, but he can throw a good football. He's going to get you the football on time where you want it, and I think he's one of those guys that works hard to build that rapport with those guys. So if I was a receiver, that's who I'd want. As far as the program, just truthfully, I don't know how good Dylan Riss' ceiling is as a player to take us to where I think we can go as a program. It's not a city to him. It's not.
Here's the other thing, though. Like, in my opinion, what Dylan Riss showed, especially with RJ Harvey in the backfield, and one of the things RJ did a lot better this year, he did better last year, but even improved upon it this year, was pass pro, right?
Yes.
So for me, when we're talking about the quarterback position, there's generally two lines of or schools of thought with that, right? So Gus wants typically an athletic guy that can hurt you with his legs as well as throw the ball.
Yeah.
Right. And generally speaking, you can try to do that, but those guys that run either get hurt, number one, or they typically just don't throw as well. Now, correct. You got like JRP who got hurt, but I think he also threw a lot better than people gave him credit for. And if he had another year as a quarterback, if he hadn't had 2 years as a receiver, I think he would have been a better quarterback.
Agreed.
But I think with Dylan Riss, what you have is, and what he proved in those games is, if you have a passing threat and you have a solid run game, because we know that Gus can scheme a run game, right? Yes. And we've got a good, stable running backs coming up, waiting in the wings. Tavion Swint was a big running back. We've got another freshman running back, he's committed now. We'll see if he signs. 4-star running back. You've got Stacey Gage. You've got Tavion Swint. You've got
Miles Montgomery.
You got Miles Montgomery that'll be coming back next year. So you've got a pretty good running back room already. Think about how crazy this is. We always had one or two guys, right? So you had like a Latavius Murray, or you had like whoever, a Kevin Smith. But now we've got literally 4 stars waiting in the wings and not even getting a carry, right?
Yeah.
We've got the ability to run. We've got a tight end. We've proven
very good. Very good. He's very good.
So it'll be really interesting to see if we can hold on to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So if you've got a quarterback that can pass the ball consistently and can run when he needs to, you can win with this offense. So correct. The question is going to be, we don't need Dylan Riss to lead the program as far as that's concerned. All we need, and our former player, UCF former player, Sock Boy, is a perfect example of that at Oregon. He passes the ball well, and he's learned finally to run when he needs to escape.
Yep.
And that's all he does. He's not a run-first quarterback. He's a guy who's going to pass, and if we've got someone who can spread the ball around, we've got enough skill players to be able to do that. So from a program perspective, building around Dylan is not a bad risk.
No.
But the challenge with Dylan is, I don't even think we've seen it. Even with McKenzie had 5 games or so that we had him at the helm. So yeah, he was still learning. We only got 3 games of Dylan Risk. He didn't play as well against West Virginia. But again, away, cold weather. He's had 2 road games in a row. Can we build around him? Sure. Do we still go after another quarterback? Sure. But no matter what,
I think you have to in this nowadays. Like,
oh yeah,
I think the way you do it, just in this era of football, with being able to get who you want and leave when you want, you have to get a quarterback every year. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you could get away with getting one every other year, things like that. But now you have to go get a guy every year. 1, because of injury, and 2, because the roster is going to flip so much. I mean, right now we have who? We have 4 guys. 3 guys, not including KJ, next year. And then we might have, do we have a guy committed already, or we're going after guys now? So we're talking about 4 guys on the roster. 2 of them are probably going to leave. Possibly 3 could be gone, and we only have 1 guy. You have to go get another guy, whether he's a portal guy, whether he's a high school guy, something. So that's going to happen regardless.
Well, it's not only that, but then on top of that, yes, and I just feel like we're in the P4 now. We marveled at when Florida had 4 stars deep, and they had, that's the expectation now. So we need to continue to do that. I just don't know how effective. So here's another program question: how effective will this recruiting cycle be? Obviously people are negatively recruiting against Gus. Oh, yeah. How effective will this recruiting cycle be now with Gus? Where do we stand as a program? We've been consistently in the 30s, which is pretty good. Power 4 is 68-ish teams, so upper half of the college football teams we've been recruiting. Where do we go from here? What is this recruiting cycle going to look like? Are we going to be able to achieve similar results with Gus Malzahn with, the performance that we've put out this year?
Yeah, that's the hard part, because again, kids are recruited no matter what we think about, NIL, all of this. And I know I come up here and say, yeah, you pay me, $10 million, I'll go play in the middle of nowhere for whoever, that's just jokingly, but you want to play somewhere where you're going to win. You want to play for a program that is looked at as a good program. Is it to a lesser extent to where, guys would want to go to Alabama and sit for 3 years just because they know they're at Alabama? Yeah, it's not the same like that anymore. But you don't want to go to a bad football team, because what's the point? It doesn't matter how much money you're making. You want to go play somewhere you're on TV.
Well, the question is, it's not even just the team at this point. It's the program, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at it more along the lines, and the original question was the program, right? Without an injection of new blood, and obviously coordinators can be a part of that, but you got to have the right coordinators, and Gus can't just hire from his own pool of candidates anymore, right?
And he has to, like we've talked about, he has to really relinquish the offense. For every year that he said, like, this, I'm going to let him call the plays, we all see the Gus sprinkle, and the head coach is going to do that. But I think,
it's his system.
It's going to be hard. It is. And he gets guys, like you said, familiar with the system. Maybe that line of thinking, he needs to get somebody that's not complete opposite, but very different beliefs, very different thought process about offense. I mean, I hate comparing him to Nick Saban, because Nick Saban is the greatest of all time. But look at Nick Saban when there was a pivotal moment where he took Lane Kiffin. And if anybody knows about the way Lane is, him and Nick Saban are polar opposites in the sense of the way they see football. But Nick knew this is where football's going. It's this spread attack, high potency, high powered offense. Now, they still run the football. Nick Saban will never get away from that. But he let the reins go to where Lane could take control and change the way that they played offense, and I think Gus has that potential. I think he can do it. He's not a dumb coach. I don't think that. But he has to be able to just let go of his baby. And I know that's hard, because he's made his name on offense. He's made his name as being an innovative guy on offense. You know, that Cam Newton season, a couple of great seasons coordinating in Auburn and as a head coach offensively. But he has to be able to let go and get somebody that's young, maybe not even young, just with the times in a sense, you know. And you can still have like, hey, I still want elements of power football in there. But you do it, you know, and I think a good coordinator can do it. Lane Kiffin can do it. That's what I think is going to be the difficult thing, because I think recruits, UCF sells itself. That's how it was for me when I was a player. I don't think anything's changed. If anything, it's gotten 1,000 times better. It's just, how can I be a receiver and want to come here and we only use one receiver? You know, like we notice this. How can I be now? If I'm a running back, I'd come with Gus because he's going to run the running backs. The problem is, we have 4 good ones, and he really relies on one and just spares the other. You know, and I think that's the difficult thing.
Well, it's 2. I mean, you know, you get 18 to 20 carries for – now, I think we've kind of had to – I think we leaned on RJ more, and you saw his carries go up as the season wore on, right? Because we needed him for the offense because we didn't have the other pieces.
He was offense.
Yeah, until you know, Dylan Risk kind of stepped in. We started using Pittman more. Yep. We started spreading the ball around more, etc. Right? Yep. So I just feel like, you know, to your point about Saban, I know one of the coaches that comes from his coaching tree that was in his offense and was, you know, made his bones with Saban.
Yeah,
and I think he was co-OC there at one point. He's a head coach somewhere else now. His whole take, because I talked to him quite a bit about what that was like under Saban. His whole take was, this is my system. These are my things that are the non-negotiables, but you go run your offense around that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So whatever you want, however you want to, whatever wrinkles you want to put in there, whatever you want to do, you go be the OC, you call the plays. I'll step in under high pressure situations, but you go run the plays, you go do your thing. And, you know, it's just around these pillars. Right.
Yep.
And, you know, I think the one thing the program could do right now, if Gus Malzahn stays, is I like the people that are coordinating right now and they're learning. They're young coordinators. I think they're going to be good coordinators. They're not bad coordinators. They did better this season once they took over than they did last. And you should see progress, right?
Yep.
But I think what the program needs now, if he's going to stay, is he needs to go get coordinators, and I mean coordinators, high dollar, high value coordinators that are going to bring energy back to the program. You saw what happened at ASU with their head coach. He was a coordinator. In fact, Gus Malzahn knew him. Yep. You know, get a guy like that to be the coordinator for your offense. Do the same thing with defense. Don't get a retread. Don't get whatever. You know, go get guys that are going to actually run the defense and the offense for you. And you be the person that everybody, you know, what do you hear from his players? He's a tough coach, but he cares a lot. He wants to get the most out of you. That's what you want out of a head coach.
Yep.
Right. But go get the coordinators you can lean on so you don't have to worry about that. And you can worry about the program. That we've got to make a splash hire, at least at OC and preferably at both OC and DC. Yep. And if we can do that, then I think that's what we need from a recruiting perspective, from a program perspective, to show that that's a way of showing that commitment to excellence at UCF. And because right now we're a rudderless ship. It feels like a rudderless ship. Gus can't go up there and say the same things anymore. Something has to change. Yeah. And it's got to be the coordinators, and it can't be coordinators that are learning, and it can't be coordinators that are going to bow to his will, and it can't be retread. It's got to be guys that he feels confident enough handing the keys to the offense and the defense and saying, here's my framework, here's my system, design an offense around it, and call the plays. And I don't know if he's capable of that. He may be, because this is now 2 seasons in a row where he's failed. If he comes back next year and he says, hey, I gave up the keys to coordinator, but I'm going to be coordinator again this year, I'm going to call plays,
He's not going to be able to say it.
It's not going to go over well. And Terry's got to buck up. And this is where Terry becomes an AD, right?
Yes. This is where you get paid the big bucks to make the tough decisions. And it will be a tough decision if it gets to that point. I hope it doesn't. But if it gets to that point, you step in, because this is what big-time ADs do. Because this is your job on line. You stuck your neck, you tied your anchor to Gus Malzahn. So are you going to let him take you down with him? You shouldn't. You can't sink the whole program just because you are tied to him. You have to be able to look, Gus, we're not doing this again. We've done it 2 years to no success. We cannot do it again. And I think, just going to your point about the coordinators, there has to be a complementary piece. And I think that's what we've missed since then. Like, if we're going to be an aggressive offense, let's be an aggressive defense. Have an identity that is yin and yang with them. It can be two different guys, but you have to be on the same page. If we're going to be a bend, don't break defense, we need to be a ball control type of offense. Now, you don't just, run the ball every play, but it has to be yin and yang with it. And I think we have the guys to do it. I think we have to get back to being an aggressive attacking team. I think that was the best UCF, in my opinion. Even the Fiesta Bowl years, we were a high-powered offense with Blake Bortles at the ship, all those receivers, the running backs. Our defense was sound. Yeah, we were sound because Coach O'Leary he's an NFL guy. We were sound. But they made plays on the football. They attacked the football. They were an aggressive defense. Transition to Frost, same thing. High-powered offense, aggressive defense. I think all those years we were top in the country in turnovers, creating pressure. Same thing with Coach Heupel. That's just what I've seen. We've had success recently is with that kind of yin and yang. We can be a high-powered offense. Nobody has a problem with it. But the defense need to be risky. They need to create pressure. And I think we saw that a little bit this year. You talked about how we've created pressure with 4 guys. It's just on the back end, we play too soft.
We started off the West Virginia game with a sack.
Yeah, I agree. We have guys that can go get after the quarterback. That's not an issue. But on the back end, when you have guys playing aggressive, don't play soft on the back end. You play aggressive with it and go make plays. So that's like a frustration. I'm sorry, I'm veering off. But yes, Terry's going to have to make those big boy decisions on that, because he can't sell to the fan base again halfway through the year. I'm taking over the play calling duties, or I'm relieving the play calling duties for somebody. That's not going to fly anymore. It's not going to work. We're not going for it.
Yeah, I think I think it's got to happen. So here's the next question. Where do you see right now, how do you think UCF is viewed as a program within both the Big 12 and the Power 5?
I think in the Big 12, we're still a respected program. I think programs like us, we're going to have these highs and lows. We're not fully established where we want to go. So we're going to have highs where we're playing well, we're a dangerous team, and we're going to have these lows where we don't really have a direction. I think that starts at the top. I don't think people don't disrespect us. I think there's some programs that we're just you're here for basketball, sadly. That's how we look at some of these teams, truthfully. But I think UCF is still that sleeping giant in the sense that now going into year 3 in the Big 12, year 5, I believe under Gus, I didn't want to be looked at as that sleeping giant. I wanted to be somewhere top 3 team, top third of the program in the Big 12, and starting to build that consistency to challenge as a perennial team in this conference, because we're the only one in the state of Florida. And I know people don't think about the recruiting aspect, but being the only Florida school in this conference is a huge advantage. You have a stronghold on this conference with talent. The only people that can rival that talent are in Texas, and everybody's in there taking them. There's how many Texas teams in this? 2 or 3 teams that are from Texas here. So I just think in the Big 12, we're still looked at as a respectable program. Gus has his cachet. We have the talent, and I think people know that. You know that you can't just go into UCF and just walk over them. You're gonna have to come with your A game. But I think as far as the country aspect, I don't know where we fall, to be honest with you. I know early in the year I joked like, would we beat Mississippi State? And right now they're not really, they're not really that kind of program. I don't know how we'd be looked upon as what I thought we would be.
Well, I think
frustrating.
I think the programs kind of looked like as a any given Sunday kind of program, but not a consistent winner program right now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually a step back after we left the American and went into the Big 12. The last 2 seasons, I think that if we look at it objectively, because UCF fans have high expectations, and Gus did himself no favors this year by coming out and saying, our goal's championship. That's where we're going to be. We built a team to go to the championship, blah, 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 blah. It takes a while for us to get back on top of this conference. We had some early successes, but we've had a lot of close losses, right?
Yeah.
A lot of close losses. So both years we could have had 2 or 3 more wins. And I think we finish out with 5 this year, but it's still, from a trend perspective, a step back. I do think that UCF is still respected as a program because they know we've overall had continued success and continued growth. The question is how fast can we get there? I think within the Big 12, nobody's going to take UCF lightly because all of our losses have been close losses, or we've been leading deep into the fourth quarter and then we ended up losing the game or whatever, right? And then
I can say we're not just getting the doors blown off. Like last year, there were a few games where I'm like, we are literally just getting blasted. Like that hasn't felt like that this year. I know the wins might be down, but I feel like we have been in every game competitively up into a good amount of points in the game. Like I remember last year, the Kansas game, I felt like we had no shot early. I felt like there was another game where I was just like, we are not going to win this.
K-State?
I haven't felt that through any of these games, to be honest with you. Now, did I predict us to win every game? No, but because I think we play good. There's moments where we lose it. We lose the game. It's never, man, they're just a way better team than us. So I think we've taken strides in that aspect, but
yeah, I mean, even this West Virginia game, 31, it should have been 31-28. Dylan Risk doesn't fumble there towards the end zone when we get in the red zone. It should be that. In fact, we did one of our things that we tend to do is outgained our opponent and still lost. And this year, this game, it was more about, we kind of started converting third downs at a good clip the past 2 games. And then this game, we just didn't. We were terrible on third down, and we didn't shut down this game defensively. We got to 3rd and longs, 4th and longs, and there was a 4th and 9, that shouldn't happen. I mean, I'm sorry, that shouldn't happen. And to your point about the DBs, I think that was a big weakness this year was the defensive backs. We just did not have good DB play. And, it started getting a little bit better, but this game, it was atrocious. It was really, really bad. Now, getting back to who we are as a program, I think right now we're still kind of looked at that program that it's not like the consistent loser program like Kansas was for 2 decades. This is a team or a program that's waiting to break out kind of program. Can Gus Malzahn get us over the hump? Is that question. I think whether he can or not, he's going to be back next year. And if we have another season like this next year, if we have another losing season, I don't think Gus Malzahn, whether he wants to be or not, is going to be here, and we'll be able to afford to separate from Gus Malzahn next year, but we after next season, but not this season. So I feel like that's where we are as a program. So let's talk a little bit about this this Utah game. Another struggling team, had similar problems as far as the quarterback situation is concerned. They've got a good defense. They play ball control now because, they had similar types of issues that we had this year. So that can go one of two ways. If UCF scores early, this could be a Arizona style blowout or a 2-score blowout. Yep. If we don't and we let them hang around, this could be a loss. So, question for you: what do you expect to see out of Utah? And do you expect to win for the final game of the season?
Yeah, the last few weeks have been betting us to lose. I think we close out the season on the win. And it sounds crazy, but the way Allen said that, when you mentioned how he didn't see like the team had given up. Now, I could be completely wrong, but Allen's been probably the biggest critic of this team this year. So I think him saying that means something, at least to me. So I think we close it out strong. I think, like you said, I think Utah has a good defense. They're a good program. They run a very good ship in general. They're just having a down year. I mean, this was predicted to be the team that won the Big 12 and was a playoff contender. I think a lot of people chose them to do that.
Everybody did.
Yeah. So exactly. So I think if we come out strong, like you said, I think we can put them away early because their offense is not good. It's going to be tough for them to play from behind. They want to play slow. They want to like you said, ball control and play defense because close games, that's what you want. When you're a team like that, you want close games because you think I can execute at the end of the game better than the other team can. That's what they want. So I think we win just because I think these guys haven't quit yet. You have a guy like RJ Harvey who, to be honest, I'm like, get him the ball 50 times. I'm not saying just run the ball 50 times, but get him the ball because I think these guys will go as he goes. This is going to be his last. He's going to leave it all on the line. There's nothing to leave out there now. This is your last game of tape, and after that, he's going to be off, in Arizona or wherever training to be a professional, so he's going to leave it on the line and he's not going to, that he doesn't get that bowl game to do all this stuff. So I think we're going to win. I think, they want to end it out on a good note. I think this is how, if you want to build for next year, end on a good note. End being an explosive team with, you see a little spark to keep belief just as a program. Have us. I want Gus to just, let it all hang. We're an E for everyone show, but just let it hang out. Let everything go and just let's just be who we hired you to be. We hired Gus to be the guy to take us to this next step. At least give us that and give us some confidence going into next year.
Yeah, I think for this game, I think the key is going to be if we get down by 10 points, so a touchdown and a field goal, it's going to be a long afternoon. Well, it'll be a short game, but a long afternoon. Yeah. I feel like, we need to get out there and score early. And, this offense can move the ball. Yeah. This offense can score. We'll be in much more comfortable weather. I do think that it impacted their play on both sides of the ball. And, even on defense, there's a lot of, senior leadership that's playing their last game. So I think they're going to try to put as much out on tape as they can. Lee Hunter's one of those guys if we want to talk about who we think will be drafted highest, Lee Hunter has an opportunity to be that guy. Yeah. He's a beast. Stat lines are stat lines, but that guy took up 2 blocks every single time. That's why we got better against the run game, right? Yes. Yeah, he's a gamer. So this game, I do expect us to come out, get a bounce back. We're comfortable. We're home. We're in comfortable weather. The big thing here will be turnovers. As long as we don't turn the ball over, which is what's kind of been our downfall lately.
Yep.
Bad special teams play, which is basically a turnover, or bad special teams play turning into a turnover. I think as long as we minimize the turnovers, the ball flies a little bit better when it's not freezing outside. It's not as hard. Your fingers aren't hurting every time you're trying to catch the ball.
Yeah.
So I expect us to be able to be successful passing again, and I do think we will win this game as well. So if you were going to put a score prediction on it, since this is the predictions part of the show, what is your score prediction for this game?
Yeah, I think we're going to win this one convincingly. I think it's going to be 35-17. I think if we jump out early, Utah's they don't want to be here. This is a long flight. They're like, let's just get out of here. And season's over. Let's just get out of here and be done with it. I think UCF has a lot to play for in the sense you guys are playing with a guy who's going to break records. And I know people might not think that's a lot, but it means something when you're playing with a talent of RJ Harvey. That was similar to playing with Shaquem Griffin for us. You want to win for them because they've poured so much. They're such good football players. You want to win for them. And I'm sure even Mackenzie Milton, those last couple of times when he was out there, you want to play for those seniors. So I think, we're going to ride the horse that we've ridden for 3 years in RJ Harvey. I think that's what we're going to do. And I think he has a beast monster day. I wouldn't be surprised if he scored all 5 touchdowns. Maybe Kobe gets one. But I wouldn't be surprised if he scores all the touchdowns, smashes that record. And I think we win convincingly to kind of give them that moment, because this is their moment. This is the moment to get RJ Harvey, 4 minutes left in the game. We have the ball. Give him one more carry and call a timeout. Let everybody think. That's what you want. That's what at least I want it to be. And I think these guys should do that. If they cared about him, if they play, because I play for those older guys, that's what you want to send them out on. So that's my prediction, 35-17.
All right. So for me, I'm not going to be quite that aggressive. I do think Utah's got a pretty good defense, kept some pretty good teams in check. So I'm going to go 28-21 UCF. I think I'm going to give a little bit of credit where credit's due for Utah's defense. And I'm accounting for a potential turnover that turns into a score. So I think, Utah puts 14 to 17 points up as an offense, but I think I'm accounting for one turnover that turns into points. So 28-21 UCF is my prediction. And so, on that note, the last game of the season, Ben takes an L, Allen takes an L, Josh takes an L, Nobra takes an L, 100-0 for all of them. And you're not here, and it's my rules this week. So no matter what, we're winning, even if it's by 3 points. So we just better hope that UCF doesn't implode. All right. That being said, let's talk about some hoops here. Our Elite 8 team, as you've called it this year. Mixed bag this weekend at the Greenbrier Classic, played in West Virginia. We did not have a good weekend in West Virginia at UCF Sports. First game, team just didn't look like they were ready. They came out against a pretty good Big Ten opponent in Wisconsin. Just did not play well, did not shoot well. Now, defensively, surprisingly enough, the score could have been a lot worse than what it was. So, I mean, there's that, but we shot something like 27%. And I think it was like, we got 3. I'll bring up the scores. I brought up the scores for the LSU game, but I didn't for Whiskey. But it just wasn't our night. I don't know if it was the venue. They were getting used to that or what, but they just did not play well and could not hit the broadside of a barn when it came to shooting. It was a 16-point loss against Wisconsin. And, by and large, I mean, UCF's field goal percentage ended up being 33.9% from 2 versus Wisconsin's 48.5. They could not miss. We were 2 of 17, which is 11.8% from 3-point shooting. Darius was off. Everybody was off. I mean, it was just, now we took some hard shots. Whiskey was a bigger team, but we still out-rebounded them 41-39. And we did much better on the offensive glass than they did. So surprisingly enough, that was going to be the big question. This team should have won this game if they did not shoot 34%. Let's be, it's 33.9, 34%. Exactly. And 11.8 or 12% from 3-point land. Turnovers, we had less turnovers than them. The assist to turnover ratio actually favored us. So statistically, we played well. We played well in the paint against a team that was their strength because they had size. 32 points in the paint for us, 38 points for them. 12 fast break points for us, 10 for them. So again, and 26 fouls on them, by the way, versus 17 for us. So at the end of the day, if we did not shoot terribly, we would have won this game.
Yeah.
Now,
it's one of those things where it's like the end objective is always for basketball. It's simple. Whoever puts the ball in the hoop more wins. But when you shoot egregiously bad, I mean, I think everywhere. We're 70% from free throw line too. Like, you can't shoot 30%.
That's not bad, and that's better than what we have been.
Yeah, but it's like you can't shoot 34% from the field, 11.8% from 3, and you're probably not winning those games. Just because the end goal of basketball is putting the ball in the hoop more than the other team does. So that doesn't help. But like you said, the score may look bad, but they didn't play that bad. They just didn't make shots. And that's and they
could have taken better shots too.
Of course. Yeah, you can get cleaner looks, easier looks as well. But
yeah, and you get behind and you try to shoot your way out of it. That's exactly what happened that game. Now, LSU UCF, don't get me started. Don't get me started on this game. UCF started off down 7 points, slow start to begin with, but then really took over the game for the vast majority of this game. The score was 40-25 going into the half. And then the second half, they made up the difference. And it was a combination of things. We were up by 16 points, 20 points at one point. And I don't understand this. 2 things I don't understand. Turnovers late in the second half. I mean, back-to-back turnovers, by our players over and over again. I mean, bricks and then shooting. I mean, we shot, I swear, I think it was like 9 to 10 possessions in a row. Brick to 3, turn the ball over. Brick to 3, turn the ball over. It's like at some point you stop shooting that 3-point shot. Jordan Ivy Curry had a pretty good game. Shot over 40%, almost 50%. Almost from field goal, was almost 50% from three. But man, he had two turnovers in a row late in the last few minutes. Normally, the last few minutes of games, we've been able to lock down and win games. The last 3 to 5 minutes, we've been doing a really good job. DJ's taken over. They've played good defense, and they've been able to close out games. This game, Jordan Ivy Curry with like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, 2 turnovers in a row. They score. He gets the ball again, turnover. I mean, it was like 4 or 5 turnovers in a row towards the end there. And it's, with maybe a bucket in between. And it's like, what is happening here? Like, I don't know what happened. They didn't play bad. Shot just under 30% from 3-point, which wasn't great for the game. But again, early on, we're hitting those buckets. Then they went on that long stretch. And I just don't understand why Johnny Dawkins doesn't step in. And I mean, we were up 16 points, and then they were within like 6 before he called a timeout. Like, you can call the offense from the bench. You don't have to have a timeout to change the offense, or when someone's shooting a free throw, you say, hey, DJ, or whoever's running point, let's not shoot for the 3, right? We're able to go inside out if we need to, but let's go inside. Yeah. And they just played terribly for a stretch of about 6 or 7 minutes, and we just kept chucking threes. And look, I get it. We're up 16 points. You want to lengthen out your possessions, whatever, right? But don't chuck threes. Just don't chuck three. I just didn't understand it. It reminded me a lot of the older teams that we had. Now, again, this team is way more talented. They're a good team. They're a solid team. They're beating the pants off of LSU, which was at that point a 4-1 team, just like UCF. But there's no way on God's green earth that should have went to overtime.
Yeah. I tuned in at the beginning of the game because, like I said, Elite 8 year, a lot of hype. I said, you know what? I'm going to watch the basketball team this year. Like, I'm going to watch a little bit more. I'm not going to lie. At halftime, I'm like, oh, this game's over. This is a blowout. So I went and cut the grass. I went and did some stuff outside. And all of a sudden, I had our chat on Do Not Disturb. And I come back after all of it, and Roger is like, we deserve to lose. I was like, oh, my gosh, we could not have just choked this game away. And like you said, when you're up 16, you can have the tendency, we're up 16, this isn't a bad shot. Okay, we missed it. It's all right. Like, you don't want to settle for that. And that's where one of those things where you have that continuity at point guard, or you have that veteran guy at point guard, you have to reel it back, like you're saying. Or you have Johnny Dawkins say, hey, reel it back. You don't want to have to call it, like you said, call a timeout after you're up 16 and they cut it to 6. That's where I think leadership comes in key. Again, I'm not a huge basketball guy. Sports like this is so much on its momentum. It swings. You have to be able to weather those storms.
Runs.
Yeah. But you have to navigate runs correctly. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can go on a 10-0 run, but don't have it because you're just jacking threes and turning the ball over. That's not how you want to do it. If you're getting good looks and just missing shots, that's fine because you're getting the looks you want. You're just missing. But when you're just jacking shots, that's not how you want to do it. So I think that's where, with a team with not as much continuity, they're going to have to grow in that aspect. And I think that's a learning experience. Now, do you want to have these kind of learning experiences against these teams in these tournaments? No, you want to win these tournaments because these are the wins that once you get into Big 12 play, we know this is the SEC of basketball. You need all the wins you can get. But I think it'll be a good learning experience. I hope it'll be a good learning experience. Let me say that.
Well, and the thing about it is again, 3/4 of the game, you're completely outplaying LSU.
Yeah. Like, it's not even close.
Like, it's not even
close. Off. Yeah. And then
right.
A quarter of it is where they make their runs, and that's why we're even in overtime. Like I said, I watched the first half. I'm like, this is the team that I thought I would see, with all the hype. My Elite 8 prediction, this is what I was seeing that trend. and Roger's in there lighting the torch under everybody because he's so mad.
Well, and the thing of it for me was like, I'm not even mad at the players. I'm mad at Johnny for not stepping in and saying, knock it off.
Yeah, exactly. Really,
okay, great. You want to push the gas on the lead. Fine. You're up 16 points. You want to, shoot some trays. Fine. Lengthen out the possessions, make the extra pass towards the end of the possession, play some inside out ball and knock and, shoot your threes. But once it's within 8, let alone 6, reel it in.
Yeah.
Go back to what what's made you a success. Drive the paint. If not, get the fouls, right?
Yep.
And that's another thing. Dude, these fouls with these refs, it was atrocious. It was it was literally atrocious in the second half.
Yeah. These are the tournament refs. I hate all because it's like, there's a difference between like exhibition basketball, which is kind of what we're playing now, and then once we get into conference play, they call it a different game. And then even in the tournament, like they call a different game. So it's frustrating that, the whistle can just be egregious and nobody's gonna not bat an eye, but it's just like, whatever, it's an exhibition.
It was really egregious.
Yeah.
I mean, we were up big against LSU coming out of the half. That first half, it really felt like, hey, this is a tournament game on CBS Sports.
Yeah.
We got to make this a little bit closer. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Seriously.
It was that bad. Like, there's normal bad officiating, and then there's that. And I'm not going to blame that. UCF should have taken advantage, and then the refs didn't. Once it got a little bit closer, the refs didn't cause the turnovers in the game.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. That was all on us, and not playing good ball security or ball security, not playing good, not handling the rock well. So, you've got to be smarter than that. And again, this team, up until this point, has done really, really well in the last 3 to 5 minutes. That's been their strength. They've had a lull, and then they've had to catch up, and then they've shut it down against, decent competition.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin, 100% a loss. It was just a bad night. This game should have been a win. And that's the frustrating part because LSU is now 5-1. This probably would have been another quad 1 win that we could have put in our bucket. We've already got 1 this offseason. And those are the types of things that make a difference if you're a 500 team trying to make the tournament.
Yep. That's the thing. And, obviously we want to win the conference. Of course, how realistic is that? I don't know.
Bro, we started off, I think it was like, of the top 10 teams, we had like 6 when we started the season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that, right? You've got Kansas, you've got Houston. Baylor's supposed to be good this year, and they traditionally have a good hoops program. K-State usually has a good hoops program. They're not as good this year, but, there's some really big names in Big 12 basketball.
Yep.
And UCF is a good team. You put UCF in some of these other leagues, and they're going to be competing for a championship. But this is Big 12 basketball. We're going to beat each other up. West Virginia is playing better this year than they did last year after they lost Huggy Bear.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a ton of
quality teams, a lot of very good tournament teams, and that's the frustrating.
Not just teams, but coaches. That's the thing that. Like in basketball, coaching is huge.
Sure.
Like I can't
and that's
tell you.
The frustrating thing because, like you said, once you get to that, you hover around that last 4 in, first 4 out. These are the wins that separate you. These are the wins that we might only go to the second round of our tournament game, but if we can miss the tournament because we lose to LSU team. Like this, these are the kind of wins that you want in your bucket when you try to cash in at the end of the season. Hey, this is my season. Let me in the tournament.
But and for me, like I wouldn't have even been mad if we wouldn't have been like this is not going to tank our season. But the fact that we were in control for as long This is the last thing I'll say on it. The fact that we were in control for as long as we were and just completely outplayed LSU and allowed them to get back into it, that's the thing that's frustrating about this game to me. So, that's at the end of the day, that's why I was frustrated. That was why I was not E for everyone in our text thread. And that's something we got to do a little bit better at. All right. Now that we've talked about that, let's go ahead, and I think we've got 4 games left until conference starts. So we've got a little ways to go. Got some opportunities to get better. This is a good UCF basketball team. It's fun to watch. You have a chance to win every single game unless you shoot like 29% from field goal and like 11.8% from 3. So, this team's fun to watch. This is going to be a fun basketball year, so enjoy it. And a lot of these guys are going to be able to come back. So, it'll be exciting to see how the season rounds out and ends up. But we're in for some good basketball. So make sure you have your UCF basketball season tickets, and it'll be good to distract us from what happened with football this year. All right, let's go ahead and pivot. All right, we're going to get into a little bit of listener love this week. And I have to apologize. Obviously, we didn't have a show last week, and we spread around the comments, but by and large, I'm the guy who responds to the comments on YouTube. So we had some on X, but I think we need to focus this week on a very dedicated fan, Eric Edwards 3055. Now, Eric has been a long time listener. He interacts with me both on my own account and everything else on X. He knows his stuff. He's well thought out, and he has his opinion that may differ from what we have, but I want to shout him out because he put some very detailed comments on our YouTube video. 1, thank you for listening and always interacting. 2, thank you for putting together a thought out response. So big shout out to Eric Edwards 3055. With that being said, and I will respond to him after the show because we're recording now. This is the first time I've looked at them, and I apologize, Eric. That's my fault. So I'm going to start. He's got three comments here. He says, first one, by the way, BYU has a lot of money to spend on players for NIL. Also, they have much bigger linemen, so that's why we lost decisively. I don't blame Gus for sticking with KJ. We paid him all that money. It would be silly to pay him a lot of money and not play him, same as JB. If this was before NIL, et cetera, I bet Risk gets a fairer shot. Okay, so a couple of things. I think we all agree that's exactly why Gus did that. I wouldn't be surprised if some of Gus's money went to KJ to get him here. But I don't even think it's that. I think it's more, there were a lot of boosters that put a lot of money into the NIL pot last year, more so than any other previous year. And, we gave KJ every opportunity to earn that money. Unfortunately for everybody involved, he just didn't. I don't think he did the work in the offseason. He didn't show up in shape. We made that joke about the towel, after the first 2 plays on the series in the first game where he was completely soaked. KJ was not ready to play this year. And I agree, we kept him in longer because we paid him a whole heck of a lot of money. And he showed some flashes here and there. I mean, I was saying that too, right?
The TCU game to me, because we hinted at like he doesn't look good. Like he didn't look like the money we were paying him. And I don't know the money we're paying him. I know we had to pay a good little penny for him.
Over $400,000.
Yeah, so like he didn't look like that, but like the first 2 games. But that TCU blip, looking back at it, I mean, even Josh notoriously said, "Is this the spark that gets KJ going? That gets him rolling." Same, and I thought that was it. Like on the road, Big 12 game, big time comeback. I mean, I was there. It was electric. And I was like, maybe this is where you turn the corner. You have those moments. but it just didn't work out. And I think that's why that game kind of gave him, I think he played 2 more games after that he started. So, like, he earned that leash in a sense from those plays where it's like, okay, if we get this KJ, we have a real shot. We have a real team. But it didn't work out. He reverted back, and I think Gus played him as long as he could without, again, just because it got obvious to where, like, all right, we have to make a change. This just isn't working.
Well, I think in Brown's case, too, I don't think it has so much to do with NIL money. I think it had everything to do with the fact that he was a highly rated quarterback coming out of high school. He had Miami's starting job and was battling with Cam Ward for that starting job. Got hurt his freshman year, came back, was due to battle with Cam Ward, and then dipped out and came here. I think the thing with Jakuri was he fits the mold for the quarterback that Gus likes. He's got an arm. He's got accuracy issues, right? We know that, but he can throw the ball 70 yards and not even break a sweat.
Yeah.
And he could run. So, and he's a big body. So I think that's what got Jakuri his opportunities, and he didn't play terribly the first 2 games he was there. And Dylan Risk is the 4th string quarterback who doesn't play Gus ball. He's not the type of quarterback that Gus wants to play. So
he's
at the end of the day,
I mean, they're literally.
He's in my opinion, he's better than Mikey Keene, and he's bigger than Mikey Keene, and he can run better.
Just more like how Gus views them as players. Like, he likes the super athletic, physically gifted quarterback versus the just the good quarterback. Like just the guy who might not wow you physically. That's just what it is. And Dylan, out of the 4 guys,
and for him, he had to admit that the 4th string guy who was the one who
the best one.
Well, I wouldn't say best one. EJ didn't have a whole lot of time. He had a couple series. Like
I wouldn't even count EJ, to be honest. Like, out of the 3 guys that played significant time, Dylan was the best guy. EJ, I think EJ is a good player. I mean, I told you guys that when I was, just from what I've talked to, my guys in high school, because I went to Georgia and he's from Georgia. Same thing about Jakuri Brown. Like, those guys were like, oh, they're really good football players, and they think EJ is going to be a really, really good football player. It's just, again, timing's everything.
He just wasn't ready. He's 17.
Yeah, he's 17. He's supposed to be getting ready to finish his senior year, graduate, go to prom, enjoy his last bit of senior year, then go to college. He's got a full year under his belt of college. Like, not a lot of 17-year-olds are going to come in. The one
thing I'll disagree with you, Eric, if you're listening, which I assume you will be, and I hope you are, I don't think Risk gets a better shot before NIL. I think that's a Gus wants his type of quarterback type of guy, so Risk is going to be the last option. I think it's more that than it was NIL. All right, so the next one he's got here, it says, you're wrong about Gus's buyout. It's $12 million if you fire him. Correct. Even if he retires, he still gets $6 million. Not necessarily. UCF can negotiate.
Yeah, it would get negotiated.
It could be $8 million. It could be $6 million. It could be $3 million.
Could be $12 million.
Yeah, it's whatever he and his agent, when he's got a good agent, is willing to give up if he retired. Yep. He says, I say Gus gets one more year, especially if Dylan stays, because the QB is the key. We don't need a press conference from Terry. We need freaking patience. Go look at how other teams have done in their second year in P5 conferences, TCU and Utah. Stop your whining and suck it up. We missed on KJ, but that happens in this day and age of football. Why is there only criticism for Gus? I don't hear anyone complaining about men's and women's soccer regressing this year as well. This is just normal growing pains. Just enjoy the games because the season is about over, and then we'll all be miserable that it's no longer football season. Okay.
You're right about that part. You are right about that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. as far as soccer is concerned, I don't think anybody's happy about any UCF sports right now, with the exception of men's basketball, women's basketball could
and the
have a
spring
good
sports
year.
who haven't played yet.
Yeah. And women's basketball could have a good year. Satia Messer's team is out to a hot start, but again, they haven't played, great teams because it's out of conference and they're getting geared up. Nobody's happy about football or about men's soccer or women's soccer. We mentioned men's soccer and the regression there. We've been talking about Tiffany Sahadik's team for the better part of the last 3 years, really on a downward trend. But let's be honest, it's the middle of football season, and that's the sport.
That's the sport.
That's the one we put the most money into. That's what we're going to talk about. It's not that we're happy about it. We've mentioned things about those two sports, but they're not the one that's nationally visible.
Yeah. That's the reality of it. Not saying that any of these other programs don't deserve that either. It's just football in the United States of America is the cash cow in majority of the country.
Well, it's the brand cow.
Yeah, I mean,
it's what holds the flag. Football, what's the old saying? Football is the front porch to a university, right? That's what they've always said for years and years and years. It's how George O'Leary and John Hitt got the stadium built.
Stadium, yeah.
Yep.
That's important.
That's why.
I asked my wife, just because I talked to her. I remember she was saying, I was like, why don't you go to, because she had offers to other schools. I was like, why don't you go to like FGCU or like some of these schools? She's like, oh, they didn't have a football team. Like, I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm not going somewhere that doesn't have a football team. Mind you, this is a collegiate athlete who could have gone to other universities to play. But she's not going anywhere that doesn't have a football team, because that's what college is like ingrained into us.
That's part of the experience.
It is. Going to tailgating, preparing for games, going to watch and cheer on your team on Saturdays, because you can relate that with every college.
Fireball, chugging fireball before.
Yeah, like 90% of the country has a football team. Like, that's something you can be relatable about and like boast about. And it's once a week versus every other sport that plays 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a week sometimes. Football is once a week. It's on Saturday, prime time. Like, that's just the glamour of it. So, sorry, Eric. If we could talk about other sports, I promise you we would. But you know what?
Volleyball ain't playing that hot this year either. Yeah. So I'd be, we expect.
I'm trying to push the basketball agenda. I've been trying it for like 3 weeks now. But again, it's just the reality of it is football runs like we're a football school. I know I joke and say
and the last point on that, just to kind of talk about your TCU and Utah example. I think the difference there, with those two teams is they didn't have someone like Gus Malzahn pushing the narrative that we're going all in this year in the Big 12 conference and all that other stuff. And I think that was a big part of it. He hyped it. We bought into it. And quite frankly, we have a better team than what we've played. I think with TCU and Utah, when you go back and look at those teams when they were coming in, there was a talent gap. I don't think there's a talent gap in the current Big 12. Oklahoma and Texas, they always got talent. They just didn't. Oklahoma. Well, Texas didn't. Oklahoma did for the most part, except for the last year or so. Right?
Yeah.
But I think, we're jumping into a league and we had expectations that we could play. And last season there were several close games that we lost, and that could have been 2 or 3 games. We mentioned that earlier. Of difference. And so Gus said, hey, we went all out. We went and got KJ. We did all this stuff. So all that preseason hype was around, hey, we're building a championship team. Yep. It's great when that works out. But when you set that's why they always say over deliver and under promise, right? Not over promise and under deliver, right? Yep. So that's what happened this year. That's the fallout. This is a proud program. We want to continue that trajectory. And there's a lot of Gus faux pas out there. There's a lot of stuff to pick on. It's not like even this last game, Mark Daniels was getting frustrated with the late substitutions or whatever. There's a lot of things. It's not like we're playing fundamental football and we're being out athleted. We have great athletes that in some cases we're losing because execution is bad. And in some cases, there's some really questionable coaching decisions. And again, Gus was brought here to win. Gus said he was going to win. Gus is not winning. And, between the quarterback decisions, between the coordinator decisions, between him flip-flopping on calling plays, and the special teams being bad again for 2 years in a row, that's a lot of Gus there. That's why we're talking about Gus. That's head coach.
Yep.
That's head coach. That's why everybody's bagging on Gus. If we just didn't have the athletes, or we didn't see as many mistakes as we did with the athletes that we have, then I think this would be a different discussion. But it's not. And that's why Gus is getting run over.
And then another point to him, like referencing Utah and TCU. This day and age, it's a little bit different because NIL has changed everything. Even just the microwave society of expectations. Like you said, Gus has expectations, but TCU was able to build and develop players before they went to these new conferences. We're playing a lot of NIL guys. Just the reality of it. That's just what it is. So it's harder to build something sustainable when every year you're churning out new teams. I mean,
well, the reason you do that is so you win now. That's why you get those players.
Correct.
They're seasoned players.
Yeah.
Ethan Barr was a seasoned player from Vanderbilt.
A 50-year guy from the SEC.
Yeah, and a very standout linebacker in the SEC. He was one of the top-rated linebackers in the SEC, right? Yeah. So we're getting guys and paying them money, so the expectations are different that they plug and play. Is that realistic? Probably not, but it doesn't help when your head coach is out there saying, hey, we're getting all these guys for a championship. And KJ Jefferson, again, I hate to harp on him because I was a big fan of that. You heard me all preseason and you heard me all season if you were listening to the show. I was a big fan of KJ Jefferson, and he just did not pan out.
And you told us, you said, if we get 2021, 2022 KJ, we're a fringe contending team in this conference. If we get 23 KJ, it could be issues. It just depended on which KJ we got. And
KJ was hurt in 23. That was the biggest problem. He just never got back in shape.
Yeah, and there's so much that happens with it, but ultimately that's what our season kind of hinged on. Gus brought in everybody he said that he would do it. It's just they didn't deliver their end. He didn't deliver on his end. Like you said, the coordinators didn't do it. It's a culmination of it. So it's not that we're just all blaming Gus for everything, but when you're the head coach of a team that has expectations, you're the first one to get the blame. And guess what? If we would have won 13 games, you're the first one to get the glory. It's not. That comes with the territory.
But it's not even just that. It's also the fact that he's made mistakes.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a season. This isn't just a Big 12. Yeah, this isn't just a Big 12 issue. I mean, you can go to the mismanagement of the conference championship game 2 years ago. You can go to you can point to a lot of things that
the Mikey Keene situation, like all of that stuff. This is
a microcosm.
This has been bubbling up for years, right? The frustrations. All right. So last one for Eric. And again, we're not trying to pick apart what you're saying. We're having a dialogue with you. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Like, we love it. Yeah, we love it.
Yeah. So the next one says, I don't understand the criticism of playing not to lose. I feel like it's a lot of hindsight perspectives. Okay, dude, I'm going to disagree with you. You see it in the NFL when people go to cover two or, max cover, zone, prevent defense. You see it week in and week out. You see it in college football, and you've seen it at UCF. especially with us giving them so much cushion even before we go into those situations. Yeah. And if you've listened to the show, Tre and I both played defense, and you play press man, and there's gonna and you bring somebody over the top, and the DB play just hasn't been there to be able to do that. And the way that we've been successful when we've been successful is being aggressive with blitzes, being aggressive with the ends, being aggressive 4-down linemen, and getting after it, right? And it hasn't been with the DB. So you play to win the game, and offensively, I'm always going to be a fan of play to win the game. Don't play conservative, because that's when it catches up to you, because you're giving the team. The thing about football is, we talked about runs in basketball. Football, if you're beating a team and you give them hope, it's sometimes worse than if you're just playing a competitive game and outlast them, right? Because emotionally, you're bringing the team that's winning. We saw it in Baylor, we saw it everywhere, we saw it in every single game, and we see it in the Big 12. Any one of these teams can come back in the end. So you've got to continue. You got to keep your foot on the throttle. This is a competitive league, and you play to win the game. Yep. That's my opinion on it. You may disagree, but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah. You can't. The problem with playing conservative is we play a violent sport. You know it, Roger. It is very mentally, in the sense of alpha, in the sense, like it's a lot of schematics. It's a lot of, design, play design, and great calls, but it's very much, I want to take your will away, offensively, defensively, at every point. Like, it's a very alpha type. So the moment you start playing conservative, the only way to do that is turning that off. And when you let somebody else bring that alpha, they start rallying. Okay, we got to change, like that momentum. You can't turn that back on. It's hard. I'm not going to say you can't. It's really hard to turn it back on when another team is already doing, like they're already in that mindset.
You're in a groove. You're feeling it. Like play all 60 minutes.
Yeah,
play the whole game.
The game is, you can't take your foot off the gas ever. Like ever. Even then, I say when we were blowing teams out and our backups win, we used to tell them, dude, if you don't perform, like, you need to be playing like your life's on the line, because guess what? This is your time to show. If you don't flash, you know what they're doing after this game? They're going to call up these guys that they're recruiting in high school and say, hey, I have this guy. You could come and play next year because the guy I have isn't good. Like, so that was like the fire you have to light under even just the backups to go, because, like, you're playing for your life in a sense. So the moment you start letting your foot off the gas, that's where, bad things happen. So, yes, I'm with
Coach is the same way. And so the next, his next, he goes on to say, I don't have a problem with Gus kicking a field goal. When the kicker almost made a 57-yarder, why not go for the 47-yarder? Some points are better than no points as far as the end of the first half. I completely blame the player that should have down the ball in the end zone. You have to absolutely know the rule 100% if you're playing college football. I don't care if you're a freshman or not. I don't quite see how this is. I don't like criticizing for them for trying to make something happen at the end of the first half. Yes, you're right. You may not get another Hail Mary, but you could at least maybe get it down 60 yards and go for a long field goal. So I don't have a problem with them passing the ball, but it worked at the beginning of the second half in last week's game where we were at the one and we threw a ball and Kobe Hudson scooped it off the turf. I agree with the assessment. This is sort of just one of those seasons where the bounces don't go your way, and that does maybe create some doubt in the players' heads. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. To me, in that situation, knowing that the other team is playing well and can score and having plenty of time, I still think you go for it on that fourth down. If you miss the 47-yarder, that's a longer kick for a college kicker, right?
Yeah.
42 yards, maybe 47's a ways. I agree. The 57-yarder, and I said that week that the 57-yarder, he showed he had the leg to do it, and he barely missed the 47-yarder. But even then, you want to put them away. And if you put them away, if you miss that long kick, then they get the ball where it is anyway. If you go for it in fourth down, we showed the ability to run the ball. We should have picked that up and if anything, taken more time off the clock. And if you don't get it, you turn the ball over anyway. So to me, I in that game with that team, the way their team was playing, you go for it. I'm going to stick to that. You may disagree with that, but I just knowing where we were, where they were, what was happening, I would go for that. As far as trying to take it out of the end zone. Usually you're running the ball in those situations. I know Gus said he felt like he didn't feel comfortable for whatever reason that they weren't going to get the push on the 1 yard line or whatever. They never should have been in that position to begin with. As we said that week, a lot of things had to go wrong for that ball to be picked. We had the slants, we had the motion, we had everything going, and that guy motioned right into the lane, the throwing lane. So yeah, the bigger issue for me was, the fact that we had that level of special teams play that preceded that. So, you're right. There's been a lot of bounces that didn't go our way this year, but a lot of self-inflicted wounds that shouldn't have happened on that special teams play. And I still think that when you're in the lead, you put your foot on their throats and you play the game to win. You play to win the game. That's just how I feel about it. I've played. Tre played. He feels the same way. I think when you play conservative, it feels like to me, if I'm on the other team, they're scared. They're scared that we're gonna win. And
you're scared of us potentially scoring.
And you're signaling to your team that you don't have the confidence to get that extra yard. It's one of those strain moments. It's one of those moments where you're like, okay, we're putting our foot down and winning this game. It was the bone moment, the going bone moment by Heupel, right? You take a little bit of risk on that. That's just
all those fourth downs that Frost would go for. It's it's just you're letting the other team know we're about to win this game.
Yeah. So thank you again, Eric, for the very detailed posts. I hope we kind of shed some light on why we took the positions that we did. And it's okay to disagree. We didn't agree on some of those the points that you made. We agreed on the others. At the end of the day, let's get to Black Friday. In my case, maybe drink some Fireball, get in there, win the game, and close out the season. And according to Tre, let's get to the Elite Eight. Okay. That's all we had for this week. We're sorry that there's only two of us. Next week, we should have more of the team back. We'll do a little bit more of a post-mortem. Maybe we'll bring Brandon Helwig back to kind of do a post-mortem of the season. We've got, actually probably after the recruiting season, because we're going to have some recruiting news to talk about with early signing day and the portal. We'll bring Brandon back at that point, so we can kind of do a post-mortem of the season where we are as a program. We'll have a lot of answers and a lot of things to talk about. Tre, anything else before we shut it down for this evening?
No, I mean, one more game week, it goes by fast. Again, like I said earlier, it's 12 weeks of some of the best times of our life, and now we're going to have to wait. What? We're going to be done in November again? Golly.
Well, it's like I said, I told everybody a few weeks ago, and Eric, I don't know if you heard this, to kind of echo what you said. The season. Enjoy this last game of the season. Enjoy the fun with your friends. Enjoy the experience. Enjoy being in the bounce house. Celebrate RJ Harvey, Kobe Hudson, and all the rest of the seniors that are playing for us this year. And like you said, it's a long off season, and it's going to be and we're going to be complaining all the way until we get to spring ball, and then
Probably complain a little bit then, and then Gus might drop us a little nugget about this team's pretty good, and then we start drinking the Kool-Aid, and we're gonna get back to that cycle again. But that's the beauty of it. Like that's what makes it fun, you know. And sadly, we're gonna end a little bit earlier than we've been used to the last decade. But yeah, enjoy it. I remember my last bounce house game, you know, and it feels like yesterday, and that was, I think, 7 years ago now. Like, it goes by fast, even as a fan.
You're old, bro.
I'm telling you, man. Golly, I'm starting to get grace. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but like, yeah, just enjoy it. And again, we're just gonna be complaining this offseason. So again, Eric, anybody, bring more questions about anything. You know, we'll start doing a little bit more, you know, talking about different experiences and what we look like and things like that, because there's no games. But ask questions about anything, you know, anything football related you don't know or want to know, or voice your opinion on it. We'd love to respond to it.
All right. Well, that's it for this show. We made it through an hour and 50 minutes without three of our guys, which surprisingly enough, that tells you, you know, everything that we were kind of holding in for the last week and a half. And I'm sure the rest of the Night Nation is too. There's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of intrigue coming up after the Utah game. But let's enjoy it. Go Knights, and
charge on always.
Charge on, baby. Since Josh,
he hasn't been here freaking what?
I know. What, Josh? I mean, seriously, stop watching the games, because we always lose when you're watching the games.
I'm going to Europe too, Josh, but golly, like, you got to freaking